microphone.
Doesn't have the Wi-Fi on it, so the hi-fi.
Oh, wow.
So, a little bit about myself. I'm not going to use the mic. Can you guys hear me? I naturally project when I speak. So, I'm a 1990 graduate of Bentley University. I have a degree in business communication. I spent 7 years as a staffing recruiter and account manager working in the information technology space in New England. Since 2007, I've worked as an IT project manager, business unit liaison, client engagement specialist for data set and software development projects for Fortune 500s. I've also worked as a writer, which is kind of funny, somebody was bringing up the need for writers, and a documentation manager, as well as in sales. I worked as a manufacturing sales representative. The common threads in my experience have been building consensus, communication, creating that shared vision, and I live in Hingham with my wife and 3 daughters. So today, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about what is it. It's not information technology. I know everybody's I've been getting some feedback on, is that what you mean? No, it's not. We're going to consider it as equaling job search today. We're going to use a journey analogy. We're going to talk about planning, packing, modes for travel, sightseeing, reaching a destination, and also planning for the next trip. We're going to use a lot of examples. I would like this to be more interactive, more conversational. I will glance at the slides to try to bring some more thoughts out. My only takeaways, or my goal today, is to give you some perspective on it, as well as if you can take one idea from what I'm going to talk about today to apply it to your search, then I think I've had success. So let's get a move on here. Okay, why am I here? That's the first thing. My journey has been kind of an epiphany to me. Networking, meeting new people, getting over the embarrassment of job search, getting over the fear that's associated with it. When Charisse gave me the opportunity to speak, I feared not doing it. And I think that's kind of the perspective that you should consider, or I would suggest to you today. Next slide, please. A little bit about what is it and what it is not. It's not information technology. This is not a sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell you something. I've been to a lot of, as all of you have, a lot of different talks, a lot of different seminars, and usually at the end, somebody trying to sell a book, trying to sell career placement services, etc., etc. The other thing I noticed is that when I went to these things, or these sessions, it was always only about one topic, and that's why I decided to talk about the journey from start to finish. What it is, like I just said, it's a map or a journey, it's a perspective, it's an approach or a paradigm. I do have a handout too, so you don't have to take intense notes unless you'd like to. It's not easy, it's not judgmental. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to promulgate thought within you about your job search and your perspective based on what I've done. And what I've done is not perfect. Next slide, please. So let's start with planning for a journey or a trip. We've all been on quite a trip probably since. Do we have anybody still working or still employed in the audience? Just raise your hand. We're lucky enough to be in that. Now is the time to be networking. Now is the time to be, quote, being a scout and selling your cookies, reconnecting with people, telling your story, getting your story. As Sigmund Freud once said, it's the talking cure. I think that also is apparent in all of us here today. You should always And so I decided for 3 or 4 people. The rest of us are not working, of course. And in sales, there's a saying called hero to zero, which basically means after you make a big sale, you're the hero. The next day you come in, you're the zero again. And it's easy. It's very easy to feel that way, especially after a job loss. The way I look at it is it's time to get some new glasses in that case. We need to remember that we control our thoughts. We're the only people that can influence them. Once again, it too shall pass. That's a phrase my wife reiterates to me almost daily. And most importantly, something I learned here in one of the prior meetings which stuck with me was that our work does not define us. It's just a part of us. So you need to keep perspective on that. Next slide, please. Once again, the big thing here is kind of a quote that I do want to highlight. In an instant gratification society where we're taught that we can buy our happiness, we actually can't. And I think the Egyptians are a perfect proof of that. You can't take it with you. The other thing is fear. Fear is the quote mind killer. If you're going to do things conventionally in this marketplace where on average companies are getting 250 to 500 resumes per opening, you're going to get conventional results. So we're going to talk about unconventional thinking, unconventional results today. The other thing is, why not? What else are you doing? You can sit at home and read the job boards all day. Been there. You need to mix it up. You need to do it. You need to say, I want to do it. And that's the hardest thing. We'll talk about strategies and how to organize that activity too. Next slide, please. Can you do a little print here, everybody? Please, help yourself. Another thing that I found helpful was kind of understanding that your day is almost like a bookshelf where you have bookends, and you own the bookends of your day, and everything that happens in between is pretty much, it's going to happen. You can influence it, but you can't control it. So I think it's important to basically keep that perspective and have ownership to the beginning and the end of your day. I'm not going to get too deep into the other stuff here about the mind-body connection. It's definitely a stated medical fact that breathing is extremely important. I know when I stress, I hold my breath. My face is probably red right now. That's a typical thing I do, but I know I do it. The other thing is, you have the time now. If you need to do a medical or health assessment for yourself, take care of that stuff. Substance abuse, mental health. You can't be too proud to take on anything that's going to be holding you back. So you need to accept that. Also, isolation versus reconnecting. I've been reconnecting with a lot of people from college that I haven't talked to in 15, 20 years. And that's okay because, as you all know, we all have our own lives. We all have a bunch of stuff.
And how do you reconnect, Rob?
I want to talk about that a little bit. Right? Exactly. I want to talk a little bit about that. LinkedIn, other alumni sites, etc. We'll get into that in a little bit. Next slide, please. So let's pack for the journey now. Okay, and this is where a lot of people who just came up and did their intros today, this is where you're at. And I know a couple of people touched upon that as people were talking here. I think the biggest thing is to know yourself, know thyself. The Socratic, I like to call it the honest conversation with Socrates. You need to figure out what inspires you, what motivates you, what makes you want to get up in the morning. There's a lot of different assessments that you can use. There's Myers-Briggs, that's one of the biggest ones. Brickman, emotional intelligence. You can usually get all this information online. I'm not going to dive too much into it. They're all self-assessment. The other thing you can do is local universities. If you went to school around here, definitely reconnect with your career services organizations. I went through a couple of those also that tie it back to standard industrial classification codes, which will help verify what direction you're going. So, the goal at this point is to understand what's the best situation for you, your motivators, and also to figure out what differentiates you from other people. And I know that's part of the 60-second, 30-second, 2-minute elevator speech. You need really to get that stuff down at the onset. So the next thing is we have an idea where we want to go for the journey or our trip. And there's a lot of different ways we can travel to get to the destination. I just listed a bunch of them up here. The biggest thing that I want to point out are the company lists. Pacesetters 2000, Boston Business Journal, best places to work in Boston, top salary, Deloitte has top 50 companies. Your network, of course, here, family, friends, neighbors, alumni, co-workers. Most importantly, your phone, your car, and your suit. Because ultimately, this is your responsibility. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about the bulleted point here in a moment. Any questions on this? I'll be giving a little more context to how I've used this stuff.
By the way, I go through the state unemployment career service center on your job quest to search for people.
The funny thing is a lot of people don't know that you can actually use the career services if you are employed. And actually their website, not that I've gone through this a couple times in the past 10 years, but yes I have. It's definitely gotten better in the past 2 to 3 years. They've really added a lot of meat to the bone on it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You have Glassdoor up in that last slide.
Yes.
Is there something about Glassdoor that's a better site than others, or is that just an example?
Well, what I like about Glassdoor is sometimes you can find specific interview questions that, the nice thing about Glassdoor is the content is contributed by people that have either worked at the company or interviewed at the company. So you can look up, for example, salary ranges for positions. You can look up reviews. I have noticed recently, though, that coincidentally you always get a very positive review. I think somebody from HR is probably writing something there to boost up the CEO rating. How many people have used Glassdoor? That's good. Do you like it?
Yeah.
It's a good resource. Kind of brings a lot of stuff together.
It's a resource.
Yeah, exactly. That's why all those things I have up there, you got to figure out what's going to work best for you. And I'll talk a little bit more about my experience with that.
On Glassdoor, they have the reviews, but it's like TripAdvisor. Every hotel has one person who's had a smelly, dirty room. Same thing with Glassdoor. There's always one person who hates the company, and you just got to take it with a grain of salt.
You definitely have to take it with a grain of salt. And what I like to do is I like to kind of maybe formulate an interview question when I'm going to talk to the company about whatever was kind of brought up innocuously. Like, so, what's your expectation on work hours during the week? If you read something that, I'm working 80 hours a week, there's no overtime, so I like to kind of maybe weave that in somehow when I'm talking to people. Mapping the journey, once again, is when you define a goal, what differentiates you from others. You need to be realistic. I mean, I actually had a bullet up here before, and it said, I took it off, and it said, am I a doctor or a rocket scientist? Just in case if we have either in the audience. One doesn't equate to the other. One requires different training than the other. So if you want to get into something, you need to be realistic about pay scale. You need to be realistic about what training, how you're going to invest in yourself, what that's going to cost, etc. Developing your brand. We talked a little bit about that already. The big thing on this is to come up with some sort of way to track your activity, because the only way you're going to be able to find out if what you're doing is working is to be able to track it. So what I do is I have just a spiral notebook, and every day I just have, I kind of make an outline where I can fill in stuff, and I have these categories. Like, what are my goals? I usually do that the night before. A couple companies I'm targeting. How many send-outs did I make? Did I have any phone conversations, or who did I network with? And did I have any face-to-face meetings? And if you that for a week, I think you'll get a good sense of what you're actually doing. And I think that's kind of the thing. If you're not doing the activity, you're going to be thinking about, what am I not doing the activity for? And it's kind of like the dog chasing the tail. And I think that's an easy trap to get into when you're unemployed. I know I've run into it where I'm waiting for a response on something. I'm like, yeah, I'll mow the lawn today. Yeah, I'll get the mulch today. You know? And then a day or two goes by and you're, well, I didn't do anything. The reason I would know that is by having that. The other thing is keeping just expenses for tax purposes. I do that. It's another kind of motivator for me that I found helpful. Please. Okay. So we have everything packed. We have kind of a semblance of figuring out, what motivates us, what we want to do. Now the big thing is, let's talk specifically more about marketing yourself. I like to call this the business of you. It's not the business of them. It's about you. You need to have your business cards. You should have those done, ready. Photo on it, tagline, a quick code to your online profile, Vistaprint. I'm not going to get into selling Vistaprint. I got 250 cards in 3 days for $50 with all that information on it. The quick code, there's a site for that. It's Kaya or something, Kayang or something like that. It's free. If you just do a search on quick code, it'll give you that graphic that you can then paste onto your card. You need to have a one-page brief, not a resume. This is used for informational interviews. Okay, what that says is it's not the chronological. It's more, career summary, 2 or 3 lines. What you have to offer a company, your experience, your target companies on it. And you can use that to have conversations with people. And then you have your basic resumes. You might want to have multiple versions depending on your jobs. I'm not going to get into the mechanics of that because I'm trying to talk about the whole process here. So, the other thing is the cover letter. When you're going to send cover letters out, I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that soon, but is everyone familiar with what the T format is? Your needs, my qualifications. Under your needs, you take literally verbatim from the job description, the top 4 items under qualifications or requirements, and you quote it. That way there's no disagreement with the HR person. Is this person making this up?
Why only the top 4?
I'd like to keep it on one page. I usually find that if I do 4 or 5, and then I have my qualifications, it usually takes up a good half a page.
But then you can deal with the rest of the rest.
Well, I can usually tell by the top ones,
Okay.
because there'll be requirements, and then there'll be qualifications, and they usually match.
That's about 20 seconds to help us anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to make it as easy as possible for that human resources professional, where you're basically doing their job for them. Because if they're going to have to dig, they're going to spend 60 seconds on your resume anyways, and then if that, probably 20, and then throw it out. The big thing is you need LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm not going to dive into that stuff. You can use Twitter to help promote yourself if you're looking at particular areas. I do that on my LinkedIn profile. Specifically cloud computing, management, leadership. Those are the topics I trend and follow. Actually, I use that for targeting stuff also. I'll get into that in a bit. You gotta, as we all know, nothing's ever constant. Change, you need to be prepared for multiple iterations on all this stuff. It's not going to be one and done. I think it drove me crazy doing my brief. I think I spent at least 15 to 18 hours on it and it's still not done because your list of target companies is going to change. Please. Yeah, can we just stand up for a second? It's 20 minutes. I usually say if you're a